Who would have thought after my review last year of the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang that I would actually be reading The Dragon Republic and continuing on with this trilogy? Who would have thought? Wasn't me. I gave this middle book 3.5 stars. I am glad I continued with it. It's quite strange. I was not planning on continuing with it after reading The Poppy War, and then for some reason, even though it wasn't on my TBR, I just kept checking the price of this, and then the second book, the third book, Burning Gods. For some reason, I knew I just was not done with it, and I knew that I couldn't just discard R.F. Kuang away like that. I recently got Babel is up there. You can see it above me. So I'm displaying that nicely also. So I'm not done with this author. I'm not done with this trilogy. And just like the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, again, I read the first book, The Justice of Kings, last year, 2.5 stars, just like the Poppy War. Thought that I was not going to continue with the series. Then at the same time as reading this, I was reading the second book in that trilogy, The Tyranny of Faith, gave that 4.5 stars. Very, very glad I continued. And just like that book, I am very glad I continued with this. 3.5 stars actually feels kind of harsh with this. It's more of a 4.25 star book. But when I punched it into my tracker, it spat me out a number that converts to 3.5. So I'm gonna roll with it. What is the premise? So, the aftermath of the horrors of the Poppy War haunt our main character Rin. She is unable to control the power / god within her, and she's also a very lousy commander of the Psyche. Not a good combination where you need to kill the Empress who sold out your country. And so teaming up with unlikely ally, Rin thinks she knows what side she's on as the civil war descends. However, there's something bigger brewing, and we know what it is, and it's pretty crazy. So that's all the premise without kind of spoiling it, especially because again it's the middle book. R.F. Kuang does avoid the sophomore slump. I will say I didn't think I mentioned this in my prose, so shout out to her. But let me go into the themes. We get so many themes in this book. I guess it's like it is a 550, way off. 600. I don't know why I said 5. It is 654 pages long, so I was 100 sure. I knew it was 50 something. And Arquan just packs it with just so many themes, ranging from addiction, pain, revenge, absolution of responsibility, the depravity of war, trauma, classism, racism, power, moral corruption, colonialism, and foreign intervention. Out of all the themes, I would say I really enjoyed the classism and the way that was done, because it's linked to, let me not spoil that, but it's seen throughout the book in terms of the haves and the have-nots, and just the way people talk about the poor and certain regions of the country, which to be honest it was also the case in the Poppy War. But I liked how that is linked to the end and what happens in the end into the absolution of responsibility is a good one. That's Rin goes through that a lot. Obviously she's got a usual addiction, revenge and pain, but the absolution of responsibility, again, especially in regards to the ally that she finds, is quite important, and Rin's journey as a leader in that regard is an important one in this book. But I will say the colonialism and foreign intervention, those are the biggest. Those two are the biggest, and I think R.F. Kuang was at her best. She wrote all the themes well, but she was at her best when she was subtly and continuously, the wave of foreign intervention which just kept coming in naturally into the story, and not in a preachy way, just in a I've seen this done before, I've seen this, we know where this is going type of way. And she still pulls it off, which I totally respect. She pulls off in a very respectable manner, not in a preachy manner. It kind of goes along with with the flow of the story and where we all know this is heading towards. So really, really, really respect that from R.F. Kuang. Moving on to the characters. Outside of Rin, at the start of the book, I did not remember a lot of the old characters and what they do. I remembered their names. I remember them from the Poppy War. You know, it's been a year since I read the Poppy War, but they're still not really characters, which is the same critique many have about the Poppy War. And it's the same here. We do kind of get someone alongside Rin in terms of, like, Rin's still the main character, of course, and it's still Rin's POV, but we do still get more, I guess, more distinct personalities. Again, we did have that kind of in the first book for a period of the first book. If you know what I mean, if you know the character I'm talking about, when Rin was in the academy, so Shingard. But we don't get that in this book. Well, we do get that in this book, but it's I think it's a lot better done in this book in terms of that kind of, not the secondary characters as a whole, but the few, one or two secondary characters that have a strong presence and have a strong say in Rin's life. They're done quite well. Moving on, Rin is still an annoying little shit, you know, no surprise there, and she's also very deeply troubled. It's the thing is that I don't hate her, and I think that's one of the reasons why one of the many reasons I kept coming back to this, and why I essentially enjoyed my reading experience, and why I'm just not, just done with this whole thing, because it's quite strange that I just don't hate her, and Kuang doesn't write her in a way to be an unlikable character, but she's just not a likable one. So you're kind of in between, and it's a bit weird. But yeah. And lastly, for the characters, the Empress was written so well. She's evil, she's complex, she's powerful, secretive, seductive. She has a very deep history, and she's just so knowledgeable. She knows so much. And again, I'll talk about the Empress later on in the prose section, but she was a very, very well done character. I wish we got more of her. It's kind of like, what's her name? It's kind of like, I forgot the name. Golden Sun from the Red Rising series, book 2. Octavia, the Empress of I don't think it's the title Empress. I don't think it's Empress, but Octavia, who's like the ruler of the universe, is like it wasn't like her in a way, but it was very. She stood out, and she was powerful and just so greatly written, like Octavia. And also, like, I might as well mention this now, also like what's her name? Also like I've never known how to pronounce it, but it's Madashi in the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. Like, Kuang's writing of the Empress reminds me of those two very powerful sort of like, head honcho female leaders that are just so good, and just written extremely well, and just the type of evil they like manifest is nuts. So yeah, that was done really well, and that kind of moves us nicely onto the prose. So there's a lot of prose, there's a lot of cons, so let's do this. The first one, part 1, was a very strong part of the book and took us to a lot of places. The missions, the plotting, the guild, the reunions were all very well done. And again, it was a good introduction as well. Like, it's a good part of the book. And again, one thing that I will say, and maybe I'll talk about this later, I'm not sure, but this book, in terms of its tone, is much better than the Poppy War, because the Poppy War had the YA tropes and the YA sort of settings with like the military school, etc. And then there's the grim dark tone shift, and a lot of people didn't like that. And I think even in my review, I said that R.F. Kuang literally put a trilogy's worth of like a usual cycle of like military school, training, problem, recruiting, massive war, all into one book. And the tone was very, very uneven. It didn't work. Even though like it was very much split up into parts, like 3 parts, it didn't work for me. Whereas this does away with anything YA. nothing YA about this book. It is pure grimdark, it is adult, and it's consistent throughout each part of the book, which is what makes this better than The Poppy War. Secondly, Kite plays a larger role, which is much needed to balance the tone of the book. I really should have put that in the character bit, but he was very, very good. Again, even more of a presence than he was in The Poppy War, which I really liked. Kuang showcases the complexities of national and geopolitics very well. I really liked sort of like the confusion, the reactions, the emotion, the annoyance about what was happening, especially in terms of the geopolitics. Really like that. This book is very well written, and this is showcased when the book doesn't feel slow during even uneventful periods, which I really respect. And that's when I knew I was really reading a good book, and I was quite engaged with this. Like, I found myself getting quite lost in this book and really just caring about it as well, which I appreciate. And again, Kuang's a good writer. She's a really good writer. So like, it wasn't a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise, but at the same time, once I have the book open in front of me, I'm like pleasantly surprised. So it is what it is. The religious aspects added another dimension to this book, alongside the imperialism and the eugenics. It was really good. Again, relating back to the themes, very well done. And this book, again, it's better than The Poppy War. It's a lot more focused. Again, no massive tonal shift, and a lot more concise with its plot and its writing as well. So just so much better. So yeah. Moving on to the cons. It's a shame that we really don't get to know any of the other characters, especially those in the psych. Even more since that they all share the same afflictions and destiny. Is a bit of a madness in that regard. But again, it's like, it really should be something to bond over, and it isn't. They don't really, essentially, even though they do acknowledge it. The flaws of The Poppy War come back to haunt this book in some respects. The first one being the emotional weight of fighting former friends and classmates isn't fully felt in this book, because the connections were so poorly done in The Poppy War. Again, remember, Rin was at a military school in The Poppy War, and there's a civil war now, and so people are on different sides, and the reunions just didn't hit the same. And again, that goes back to the legwork that wasn't done and wasn't properly executed in The Poppy War. And then the second one is that this book solely being Rin's POV restricts the story enormously. Again, same kind of problem with, like I mentioned, The Tyranny of Faith, The Justice of Kings, The Empire of the Wolf trilogy. Even though I liked it, Helena's POV, single POV, hinders the story more than it helps, mainly because we have such complex characters in that trilogy. But moving on, the last two cons I've got here. The Psych may be one of the worst written crews that I've ever read. It's so much so that they seem kind of redundant in a way, and I really didn't like that, because and here's the thing, especially in fantasy, every other crew I've read, even fantasy or sci-fi, is way better than the Psych. I'm talking about, the Six of Crows. Those guys were absolutely great. Red Rising, all of those guys are just absolutely fantastic. Those are probably Red Rising has the best written secondary characters I've ever read. Harry Potter, the crew there, Dumbledore's Army, the Order of the Phoenix, all those guys outside of the main trilogy, and even the main trio, I should say, are absolutely fantastic. Greenbone Saga, the family clans, No Peak clan, the Mountain clan. And again, we see it more from No Peak, but is absolutely exceptional. The history, the fights, but the solidarity all at the same time. And especially going back to Six of Crows, the genius and the daring, it's all there. And then Binyashis is even better than that. And even Binyashis, I mean, yeah, that series, they had the Avengers link up in the last book. Again, not perfectly done, but better than the Psych. Maze Runner, the crew there are a lot tighter than they are in the Poppy War. His Dark Materials, the crew that's assembled throughout that trilogy, way better than the Psych. And there's just so many, just so many examples. So that's a shame. Like the Psych is just it's so poorly written as a crew that it's kind of sad. Kite and Rin as a duo, I really like, but that's not even the main sort of thing. Like there's the Psych, so that's a shame. Then lastly, and again, this is the more minor con, for a soldier and a powerful but conflicted character, Rin does way too much screaming. I'm just like, she's just screaming all the time about something, and it's just so weird to see. And it's not like the warning people or issuing orders kind of screaming, it's just screaming. And I'm just like, I'm reading this and I'm like, and it's weird, like something will happen, she'll discover something in like the dark parts of a wood, and then, you know, as she's going to use and as she's going to relieve herself, find something, screams. We cut to the aftermath of that, of like, you know, the search or the investigation or whatever. And I just found it so weird. And I was just like, why? Like, she's a whole soldier and powerful being. Like, what's up with the screaming? So yeah, it's not like she like goes by herself and like investigates these things, and no, she just screams. And I'm just like, it's so weird. Anyway, guys, Dragon Republic, I really can't wait to read The Burning Gods, which is the last book in the trilogy. And then I'll do a sort of like trilogy review also. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching and thank you for listening.